Let's jump into that first story. We got this one from the Daily Caller. Poll. Young men of both political parties think feminism does more harm than good.
It sounds like toxic masculinity to me, Tim.
You're right, except Republican women of all ages also really don't like it.
Interesting.
Ooh, well, but hold on. What is a Republican woman?
Well, I suppose if we're talking about identities, a Republican woman is a Republican adult human female.
Sounds like
But a Democrat woman could be something totally different.
Well, because now that, look. Obviously, we have wonderful progress in this era where a word can mean whatever you want it to mean instead of what it actually means. And so maybe it's the case, unfortunately, that there's a negative side effect here where men are just saying that they're women, disguising themselves as women, and then telling these pollsters feminism is bad to make us think women oppose it.
What if these are Republican men who don't realize because they identify as Democrats that they're not really Democrats?
That's probably it.
Not really men.
I actually think that's an argument they would entertain. They're like, well, if a Democrat man says he hates feminism, he's actually a conservative.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he's just wrongly identifying.
My biggest problem with it is that the definition of feminism has changed over the years. There's actually 4 to 5 waves of feminism. My mother she raised me kind of as like a second wave feminist, where it was about equality of opportunity for every person. Didn't really matter what your gender was. And that was basically it. It was never like talking down to men. It never was about making men. Because I used to ask it like as a question as a kid. Does that mean men are bad? Does it mean women are better? And she said, no. It's about equality of opportunity for these people.
First wave feminism was we should get to vote, right? That was like we should have right. And second wave feminism was that no more firm, open palm slaps on the behind from men in the workplace kind of stuff. Like
essentially,
like equality in the workplace. That. I don't know, 1950s era smoking, guys smoking, like, come here, babe. That stuff's out.
The sexual revolution, I think,
being
birth
able
control.
to get credit cards and bank accounts, things like that in the 70s, 60s.
That's fascinating, though. Tell me about that.
Well, it used to be that women used to have a harder time with that kind of thing, being able to get mortgages and bank accounts and things. So, when like the Equal Rights Act and everything was able to help us with that.
Well, but do you know why that was? Was it like men at banks were like, babe, you think I'm giving you a loan? Never going to happen. Yeah, get out of here.
I think that
was the 20s, though, by the way. In the 70s, they were hippies, right?
Yeah, I think that it was, just previously not illegal to discriminate against somebody because of their sex. And so, maybe for whatever reason, banks just said, well, maybe as a woman, you're going to have a baby and not pay your loan back or whatever it was. For whatever reason, they just didn't tend to extend credit to women.
I think, it probably was? The woman would go in to get a credit card and they would say, and is your husband okay with this? And when they were like, my husband doesn't matter, they'd say, well, he pays the bills, doesn't he? So, before women were as prominent in the workplace or in higher positions, they probably just said, you have lower credit just inherently by not doing these jobs.
Sure. Could be.
Well, this is the kind of feminism that most people are like, yeah, that's cool. Like, you shouldn't discriminate on these. Like, it should be your job. It should be your actual credit, not, you got boobs, can't have a credit card. That seems like arbitrary.
The Equal Pay Act, that's from 1963, signed by Kennedy. I haven't looked too deeply into how it's read, but the Equal Pay Act, it's a labor law, prohibits gender-based wage discrimination.
I feel like that was made redundant by the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Could have been. Maybe a precursor to that.
Yeah. So now, feminism, probably the reason young men don't like it is that modern feminism is what, a catch-all term for basically all sorts of weird bigotry, discrimination, rage, even violence.
I think even from the get-go, though, when there were arguments to be made that women were being treated unfairly in certain respects, the feminist movement was still mostly pushing for the, so to speak, privileges men had rather than the responsibilities, even at that time. So, for example, women couldn't vote. They also couldn't be drafted. Part of why many women didn't want the right to vote at that time is because they thought it was going to come along with a duty to be drafted, which feminists at that time did not argue for while they were arguing for the vote.
So you're saying women should be drafted?
Well, no. My point is that I think part of the issue is even from the beginning when we're discussing legitimate issues, feminists were more or less. They were saying men and women are equal and should be treated equally in every respect, but then they would conveniently ignore the responsibilities men had, which women didn't, and not pursue equality there.
Yeah, with rights come responsibilities. I looked it up also just to clarify. It was 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, to prohibit credit discrimination on gender.
Wow. Well, what's your view? You're the clinical psychologist here. I'm curious what your thoughts are on modern feminism.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's such a loaded issue, right? I mean, I think, Tim, that probably I kind of go with you in the sense that I'm obviously for equal rights for everybody. But I think a lot of women actually kind of want the right to be more traditional, the right to be able to be respected as a woman, to be able to recognize that homemaking and housewifery and raising babies, that those things actually really matter. And, you know, girls getting kind of pushed into this stuff under the guise of girl power is sometimes not quite so empowering. Also, as a boy mom myself, meaning I'm a mom to a son, I think also some of this, you know, girl power stuff has actually gone a little bit too far, to the point where it's hurting boys, which is actually also hurting girls, you know, to the point where girls don't want to date weak men. But that's unfortunately what some of this like over the top girl power stuff seems to be doing.
You say it hurts boys. Like, what's an example of that you've seen?
Well, I mean, so if we are praising and helping girls to the point where, for example, girls are outpacing boys when it comes to college graduation or graduate school, girls are actually also paid more than boys now on average upon graduation from college. So, I mean, these are just a few examples, but obviously also boys' suicide rate is much higher and other types of problems. And so when we're, you know, just still, for whatever reason, still focusing on, you know, more federal dollars to help girls in school, when in fact it's boys who have a literacy crisis. So anyway, all of the focus on girls, I think is kind of a little bit superfluous at this point.
Well, this sounds like really good news for young Chads, right? If the average man is making less money than the women, they're basically out of the dating pool. And then the very small proportion of Chad young millennial, you know, Gen Z men who are making all the money get all the women.
You see
What's the
this,
problem?
Well, you see this all the time whenever there's some Twitter thread that goes viral about someone who's using Tinder, and she finds a guy that she likes and she swipes on him and then finds out he's been talking to 20 other girls. It's like, well, that's because you swiped on like 99 guys, swiped on that one guy, and it was the same thing for all the other girls. So he just had a bunch of options. That's what ends up happening when the monogamous social standards break down. But also, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's very interesting because you'll have these nebulous campaigns about how girls are called bossy more often, which isn't really something we can test for, have statistics on, and yet we ignore the fact that boys
I've never
are put on.
heard that.
That's an argument, yeah, but there was a whole campaign, ban bossy, right? And we were told that we should all kind of like hang our heads in shame because when girls are assertive, they're told they're bossy. And no one at the same time will talk about the fact that boys are more likely to be prescribed ADHD medicine in school. They are literally chemically altered because our public educational system is failing them, and no one seems to consider it an issue.
We're also chemically altering young girls with birth control en
Yes,
masse.
Agree. Yeah. And I think that's a problem as well. Hormonal birth control causes problems that no one's willing to acknowledge.
I've never experienced a work environment where people have complained about a female who is bossy. Like I've heard the argument, but I've never been in an environment where I'm like at lunch and someone's like, man, that Janet's so bossy. It's never happened. I've heard people be like, my boss is a dick. And I'd be like, who's your boss? It's John. I'm like, oh. Or like, who's
Janet?
Or it's Janet. Like,
yeah, she's still
I don't like my boss.
Janet
How
could be a
about
dick
that?
too, yeah.
I don't know. It's just most people don't like their bosses. You know, it's a weird thing. That's like, I wonder if that is in itself sexism. These assumptions.
Yeah. Well,
the
it is.
assumption of victimhood. The assumption. Here, I'll tell you something else, man. I was talking to this guy who produces documentaries, and we were talking about this issue, and he was like, my experience was that whenever we would have pitch meetings, the women in the meeting room would be giving us stupid ideas, and then everyone would be getting really frustrated and annoyed with these really dumb ideas, and then she would complain that no one takes her opinion seriously because she's a woman, and we try to explain to her, no, it's because your ideas are dumb, but she took it to the female place instead of the bad at her job place, and you know what it was? Because she was brought into the room because she was a woman, because they needed diversity.
It's true, that can happen. And then also because women can sometimes be more sensitive to criticism, right? And if you do criticize that woman's ideas in the boardroom, then, you know, you can get this big reaction of like, you know, well, you know, you're undermining me because I'm a woman, or you're not taking me seriously because I'm a woman. And, you know, what they're doing, unfortunately, then is depriving themselves of the chance to have real, honest feedback and collaboration, and even to, you know, engage and spar and develop and improve, because they're bringing it all, you know, to being a woman. And so then nobody does comment. Nobody wants to say anything unless it's going to be really, you know, nicey nice. And then they wonder why nobody ultimately goes forward with those ideas.
Yep. I think when you have what's the quota filled roles, you're going to see a lot more of this, where people who are minorities or women are going to feel like there's racism. I mean, maybe that's the goal. Maybe maybe many of these activists want to create this by putting people who are unskilled in positions they're not qualified for, so that they feel inadequate constantly, and then the person can come in and say, oh, that feeling? Racism.
Well, and we have to understand this is a very, very serious problem, because whenever we talk about the idea of like marginalized communities, whether you're talking about, you know, the alphabet people, or you're talking about people who are, you know, minorities because of their ethnic group in this country, the most serious problem, I think, is the breakdown of the relationship between men and women, because that is the most fundamentally important social relationship that exists.
Men are supposed to open pickle jars,
That's
and women
right.
have babies.
Those are the rules.
Well, but no, I mean, people will talk about like sexism, homophobia, etc. And I think with sexism, unfortunately, whenever there are issues that are addressed with the relationship between the sexes, it's always in one direction. The conversation can only ever be women are being treated unfairly and men are bad. And what's interesting about that is there's actually kind of a kernel of traditionalism and natural law in that, because people recognize that it is the role of men to protect women and to care for women and to provide for them. And so it's sort of bizarre because we have this concoction where we're told that men and women are exactly equal, but also men still have to fulfill this traditional role of being the one who cares for her and protects her.
And who's tough and has a thick skin. Like, remember that Amber Heard tape where she's like, tell him, Johnny, tell him that, you know, that you were abused, you know, and she's just like, you know, going.
See who believes you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then nobody talks about toxic femininity, of course, you know,
I
but
do.
toxic masculinity all the time is this big thing. So I think you're absolutely right. It's so much more normalized and comfortable for people, whether it's at school or work or personal lives or whatever, to just trash talk men.
Yeah.
Well,
and
let's
can I just want to make a point about toxic masculinity. This is a term which they always feign confusion over whenever anyone points out that it's offensive. It is clearly an intentionally provocative phrase. If you wanted to get authentically masculine men on board with your project, you would not label their bad behavior as a form of masculinity. You would say something like, well, actually, these men are behaving in an effeminate way when they treat women poorly because they're not being men who are protectors. Instead, they label it masculinity and go, well, why would you be against us calling it toxic masculinity? It's like, because you're attacking men in general and then claiming you're only attacking a small subsection.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.